Hello friends, welcome back to Oceanic Economics. We come with the new topic in this series, the Greatest Economics. In this video, we discuss about the Paul Samuelson. He was known as one of the most influential economists of the 20th century and the heart of the revolution in the economics. He also known as father of modern economics. In this session, we honor to his contribution in economy. Its help to us work demonstrated the power of bringing mathematical to the bear on the important economic debate on the simplifying the analysis of the focusing on the small number variable at this time. He leading the approach in the whole life as the play a important role in economics, policy making and the other. Paul Samuelson, the first American Nobel laureate in the economics and the foremost academic economist of the 20th century. He receiving the Nobel Prize in 1970. Mr. Samuelson was credited with the transforming his discipline from the one that ruminate about the economic issue to one that solve the problem, answering the question about the causes and the effect with the mathematical rigor and the clarity. Professor Samuelson wrote on the most widely used college textbooks in the history of American education. The book's name is Economics. First published in 1948, was the nation's best-selling textbook for the nearly 30 years. Translated into 20 languages, it was selling 50,000 copies a year a half century after its first appeared. Paul Samuelson was an American economist who was the first American to win the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Science. When awarding the prize in 1970, the Swedish Royal Academies stated that he has done more than any other contemporary economist to raise the level of scientific analysis in the economic theory. Economic historian Randall Parker has called him the father of modern economics, and the New York Times consider him to the foremost academic economist of the 20th century. Professor Samuelson was likely the most influential economist of the later half of 20th century. In 1996, when he was awarded National Medal of Science, considered to be America's top science honor. President Bill Clinton commended the Samuelson for his fundamental contribution to the economic science for over 60 years. Samuelson considered mathematics to the natural language for the economists and contributed significantly to the mathematical foundation of the economic with his book Foundation of Economic Analysis. He was the author of the best-selling economics textbooks of all time, Economics: An Introductory Analysis, first published in 1948. It was the second American textbook that attempted to explain the principle of Keynesian economics. It is now in 19th edition, having sold nearly 4 million copies in 40 languages. Paul Samuelson was born in Indiana in USA on 15 May 1915. His father was Frank Samuelson as a pharmacist and mother Ella Lipton. His family, he later said once in time, made up a upwardly mobile Jewish immigration from the Poland, who had prospered considerably in World War I. After 1923, Paul Samuelson moved to Chicago, where he graduated from the Hyde Park High School. Samuelson was educated at the University of Chicago, completed BA degree in 1935, and Harvard University completed PhD in 1941. He became a professor of the economics at the MIT in 1940. He also served as the economics advisor to the United States government. Paul Samuelson contributed to the many areas of the economics theory throughout the powerful mathematical techniques that he employed the essentially as a puzzle solving the device. His Foundation of the Economic Analysis is published in 1947, provide the basic theme of his work, with the universal natural of the consumer's behavior seen as the key of economic theory. Samuelson studied the such device field as the dynamic and the stability of the economic system. The incorporations of this the theory of international trade into that the general economic equilibrium, the analysis of the public goods, capital theory, welfare economics, public expenditure, of particular influence has been the mathematical formulation of the interaction of the multiplier and accelerator effect and the consumption of the analyze is the development of the theory of reveal preference. Samuelson hugely contributed to his popularity of his publication. His introductory textbook, Economics, is published in 1948. He is considered as a classic. The collections of the scientific papers of the Paul Samuelson was published in the 5 volume between 1966 to 1986. Samuelson was a columnist for the Newsweek from the 1966 to 1981. He was the co-author of the textbooks Microeconomics and Macroeconomics, with both the published in the 1989. Samuelson family include many well-known economists, including brother Robert Summers, sister-in-law Anita Summers, brother-in-law Kenneth Arrow, and nephew Larry Summers. To know more about Paul Samuelson, his full name was Paul Anthony Samuelson, born in 15 May 1915, death 13 December 2009, at age 94. Education, he completed BA in University of Chicago and PhD Harvard University. Institution he related was MIT, tradition in field Neo-Keynesian economics. He got awarded in John Bates Clark Medal 1947, second Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Science in 1917, National Medal of Science 1996. He was given the contribution in many fields like neoclassical synthesis, mathematical economics, economic methodology, reveal preference, international trade, economic growth, and public goods. Paul Samuelson is among the last generalistic to be incredibly productive in the number of the field of economics. He has contributed fundamental insights in the consumer theory and the welfare economics, international trade, finance theory, capital theory, dynamic and general equilibrium, and the macroeconomics. When he was a professor of economics at the MIT College, Samuelson worked in many fields, including consumer theory, where he pioneers in the reveal preference approach, which is a method by which one can discern consumer utility function by observing their behavior. Paul Samuelson raised the level of mathematical analysis in the professions until the late 1930s, when the Samuelson started his stunning and steady stream of the articles. Economics was typically understood in the terms of the verbal explanation and the diagrammatic model. Samuelson wrote his the first published article, a note on the measurement of utility, as the 21-year-old doctoral student at Harvard University. He introduced the concept of the reveal preference in 1938 article. His goal was able to tell by the observing the consumer's choice where he or she was better off after the change in the prices. And indeed, Samuelson determined the circumstances under the which one could tell the consumer reveal by the choice his or the preference, hence the terms of reveal preference. Samuelson's, which did more than any other single book to spread the mathematical revolution in the economics, is the foundation of the economics analysis based on his Harvard PhD dissertations. This book shows how the virtually in economics behavior can be understood a maximization of the minimization subject to the constraint the John Hicks did something similar in the 1939 book Value and Capital. But while the Hicks regulated the maths of the appendix, Samuelson wrote the former Samuelson student Stanley Fisher's fluent in his text. Samuelson mathematical techniques brought a new rigor to the economics. As a fellow Nobel Prize winner, Robert Lucas put he will take these incomprehensible verbal debate that go and on the never the end of the just in them, formulating an issue in such the way that the question is answerable and then get the answer. Swedish economics Bertil Ohlin had argued that the international trade would tend to equalize the prices of the factor of the production. Trade between the India and the United States, for example, would narrow wage rate differential between the two countries. Samuelson, using the mathematical tools, showed the condition under which the differential would be a drive to zero. The theorem he proved is called the factor price equalization theorem. In finance theory, which took up the age of 50, Samuelson did some of the initial work that showed that the properly anticipated figures prices should fluctuate randomly. Samuelson also did the path-breaking work in the capital theory, but his contributions are too complex to describe just a few sentences. Economists had long the belief that there are the goods that provide private sector cannot be provided because of the difficulty to charging those who benefit from them. National defense is one of the best example of the such goods. Samuelson, in a 1954 article, was the first attempt to rigorous definition of the public goods. In macroeconomics, Samuelson demonstrated how the combine the accelerator theory of the investment with the Keynesian income determination model explained the cyclical natural business cycle. He also introduced the concept of the neoclassical synthesis of the old neoclassical macroeconomics and the new in 1950s. Keynesian macroeconomics. According to Samuelson, government intervention in via fiscal and monetary policy is required to achieve the full employment. At full employment, the market work well, except the provide the public goods and the handling the problem of the externalities. James Tobin called the neoclassical synthesis one of the Samuelson's greatest contribution to economics. In 1970, Paul Samuelson became the first American to receive Nobel Prize in Economics. It was an award for the scientific work throughout the which he has developed the statistic and dynamic economic theory and actively contributed to the rising the level of analysis of economic science. Samuelson began the teaching the mathematical and also MIT College in 1940 at the age of 26, became the full professor 6 years later. He remained there at the time of this waiting in writing 2006. In addition to being the honored with this the Nobel Prize, Samuelson also earned the John Bates Clark Award in 1947, awarded for the most outstanding work by the economists under the age 40. He was the president of the American Economic Association in 1961. As a professor of economics at the MIT, Samuelson worked in many fields. Consumer theory, he explained about where he the a pioneer is the revealed preference approach, which is the method by the which one can the decide on consumer utility function by observing their the behavior rather than the postulate utility function of the preference ordering. Samuelson imposed the condition directly on this choice of the made by the individuals. There the preference as revealed by their choice. In welfare economics, in which the popularized the Lindahl-Bowen Samuelson condition, and this the demonstration in the 1950 and the insufficiency of the national income index of the reveal which of the two social option was uniformly outside the other possibility function. Capital theory, where he is known for the 1958 consumption loans model and the variety of the Turnpike theorems and they involve the Cambridge capital controversy. Finance theory, in which the known as the efficient market hypothesis. Public finance theory, is which is particularly known as the work on the determine the optional allocation of the resources in the present of the both public and the private goods. On international economics, where he influenced the development of the two important international trade model, Balassa-Samuelson effect and the Heckscher-Ohlin model. Macroeconomics, where the popularized the overlapping generation model as the way to the analyze the economic agent behavior across the multiple period of the time and they contributed to formation of the neoclassical synthesis. Samuelson developed the concept of the reveal preference, which argued that the consumer utility function can be deducted from their the behavior. His application of these the mathematical constraint optimization to the consumer behavior deal with the consumer preference as revealed by their the choice rather than the assumed utility function. He also made a contribution to the welfare theory, including the Lindahl-Bone-Samuelson criteria for the determining the where the change in the economy will improve welfare. Samuelson contributed to the development of the efficient market hypothesis with the mathematical proof that they say if the market are the efficient, then the asset price will the follow of the random walk. However, he also argued that the observing the random walk in the asset prices did not prove that the financial market are the efficient. In public finance theory, he developed the theory of the public goods and optimal public financing of the public goods in the market economy of the private goods markets. Samuelson helped develop and popularize the neoclassical mathematical macroeconomics include the overlapping generations of the model and use the multiplier and acceleration effect to explain business cycle and recessions. His most important contribution was he introduced the neoclassical synthesis. This is the view that under the full employment and macroeconomic equilibrium, and the economy based on the neoclassical macroeconomics of the supply and demand could function efficiently. However, that the neoclassical theory better described the macroeconomics and supported the necessary government macroeconomics policies and achieved the maintained condition of the full employment which the macroeconomics market required to the function efficiently. Paul Samuelson's pure theory of public expenditure is a concept in economics that was introduced by the Nobel laureate Paul Samuelson in 1954. The theory seeks to explain the rationale behind the public expenditure and the role of government in financing and providing the public goods and services. According to Samuelson, the public goods are the goods that are non-rival and non-excludable in nature. This means that the consumption of the goods by the one person does not reduce the availability of the goods to other, and that is difficult to impossible to exclude people from using the goods one is has been provided. Example of the public goods include the national defense, street lighting, and public park. Samuelson argued that the provision of the public goods is the important role of the governments, as a market mechanism may not provide these the goods in the sufficient quantity and quality due to free rider problem. Externalities and the public goods are not amendable and price mechanism. He argued that the public goods can only be provided efficiently through the government intervention and that the government should allocate resources toward the provision of the public goods until the marginal social benefit of the goods equal in the marginal cost of production. The theory also suggests that the government expenditure on the public goods can have the positive effect on the economic growth, as the provision of the public goods can lead to the greater productivity, innovation, and technological advancement. However, the Samuelson also acknowledged that the excessive government expenditure can have the negative effect on the economic growth, as it may lead to the higher taxes, inflation, and crowding out the private investment. In shortly, Samuelson's pure theory of public expenditure suggests that the government should focus on providing public goods and allocate resources toward the provision of these goods until the marginal social benefit of these goods equal and marginal cost of production. The theory recognized the importance of the government intervention in the providing the public goods while also the acknowledging the potential negative effect on the excessive government expenditure. As a member of Kennedy campaign Brain Trust, Mr. Samuelson headed an economic task force for the candidate and held several private sessions on the economic with him. Many would have the bearing on decisions made during the Kennedy administration. Thoughts of Mr. Samuelson was President Kennedy's first choice to become the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisers. He refused, on the principle, to take any government office because he said he did not want to put himself in the position in which he could not say and write that he believed. After the 1960 election, he told the young president-elect that the nation was heading into the recession and that Kennedy should push through the tax cut and head it off. Kennedy was shocked. Kennedy eventually accepted the Professor Samuelson's advice and signaled his willingness to cut the taxes, but he was assured before he could take the action. And say they carried out the plan, however, and the economic bounce back auction. Professor Samuelson provided a mathematical structure to the study of the importance of the trade on the different group of the consumer and worker. In the famous theorem known as the Stolper-Samuelson, he and the co-author of the show that the competition from the import of the cloth and the similar goods from the underdeveloped countries, where the provide the really on the unskilled worker could drive down the wage of the low-paid worker in industrialization countries. This theorem provides the intellectual scaffold of the opponents of the free trade, and late in his career, Professor Samuelson set up the intellectual combination of the pointing of that the economy of the country like the United States could be heart of productivity rose among the economies with which is traded. Professor Samuelson analyzed the revolution of the economies with the mathematical model called the overlapping generations model that the scholar have seen used to study, for example, functioning over time of the social security system and the management of the public debt. He also helped develop the linear programming is the mathematical tools used by the corporations and the central planner in the socialist countries to calculate how to provide the preset level of the various goods and service at the least cost. A historian could well tell the story of 20th century public debate over the economic policy in America throughout the jousting between the Mr. Samuelson and Milton Friedman, who won the Nobel in 1976. Professor Samuelson said the two had almost always disagreed with each other but had remained friends. They met in 1933 at the University of Chicago, when Mr. Samuelson was the undergraduate and Mr. Friedman a graduate student. Unlike that, the liberal Professor Samuelson and the conservative Mr. Friedman opposed the active government participation in the most areas in the economy except the national defense and the law enforcement. He thought the private enterprises and the competition could do the better and that the government controlled the pose risks to the individual freedom. Point of view of Samuelson model on business cycle. Samuelson in his seminal paper convincingly showed that it is the interaction between the multiplier and accelerator that given the rise to the cyclical fluctuation in the economic activity. The multiplier alone cannot adequately explain the cyclical and cumulative nature of the economic fluctuation. An autonomous increase in the level of investment raise in income by a magnified amount depending upon the value of the multiplier. This increase in the income further they induce in increase the investment throughout the acceleration effect. The increase in the income bring about the increase in aggregate demand for the goods and services. To provide more goods, we require more capital goods for the which extra investment in undertaken. Thus, the relationship between the investment and income is a one of the mutual interaction. Investment affect the income, which is the turn to affect the investment demand, and these the process income and the employment fluctuate in the cyclical manner. Paul Samuelson also contributed the social welfare function. The so-called the Bergson-Samuelson social welfare function was first introduced in 1938 by Bergson and subsequently developed by the Paul Samuelson in 1947, foundation of the economic analysis. However, the very existence of the social welfare function was called the question by the arrow landmark impossibility theorem in 1951, which the stated that under the set of the reasonable condition that the social welfare function can be shown not to exist. Yet the social welfare function are the today still the widely used in the range of the field in the order to formulate the policy in. It's thus the sum of this use of the such of the functional that the flourished independently of the theoretical debate about their the existence. The objective of this chapter in this offer the short history of the social welfare function from the origin in the late 1930s up to the present day. Professor Samuelson's utility possibility approach it was given by the Samuelson. It consists of the representing the social welfare function by the family of the social indifference curve. A family of the curve is shown in the figure in utility possibility frontier. Maximum social welfare attained to the where the social indifference curve is just a tangent to the utility possibility frontier. Is represented the unique organization of the production, exchange and distribution that lead to the maximum attainable social welfare. Stolper-Samuelson point of view on the international trade, they present a Stolper-Samuelson theorem. The Stolper-Samuelson theorem simply suggests that in any particular country, a rise in this relative price of this labor-intensive goods will make labor better off and the capital worse off, and the vice versa, to provide that the some amount of the each goods is being the produced. According to Stolper-Samuelson model, in the international trade and the relative changes in the factor prices would affect the distribution of the income was the work of these the Stolper and Paul Samuelson on the basis of the Heckscher-Ohlin theory. The theorem developed by these written state of the comprehensive of this free international trade would benefit the relative abundant factor and hurt the relatively scarce factor of production. Professor Samuelson died after the brief illness of December 13, 2009, at the age of 94. His death was announced by the MITs. Professor Samuelson transformed the everything is a touch, the theoretical foundation of his field. The way of economics was taught around the world, and the ethos and the structure of his department of the investment of the practices of MIT. In this video, we cover all the related subject in this topic. If any question you have, please ask me in description box. If you want to more videos like that, please share, like, comments and subscribe to our channel for the more explore new topics. Stay tuned with the Oceanic Economics. See you in next video. So, thank you.